This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 606 of Horse Tip Daily. A different horse tip, a different equine topic, a different equestrian expert every day. Horse Tip Daily brings the world of equine knowledge to you, one day at a time. Today's tip is brought to you by ECOGOLD, saddle pads and protective boots for your equine athlete. Greetings, horse people. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily. Today's tip is about injuries in Western performance horses. It's an excerpt from the Horse.com's weekly horse health report on the Horses in the Morning Show, episode number 353. But first, a word from today's sponsor, ECOGOLD. ECOGOLD uses the latest developments in textile engineering plus smart design to make the most advanced saddle pads and protective boots available. Here's what two-time Canadian Olympic three-day coach, international competitor, and author Jane Savoy has to say about ECOGOLD pads. I love the ECOGOLD dressage pad. I love the way it looks and how it stays perfectly in place. But most importantly, I love the frictionless feature that ensures that my horses are happy. If you care about your horse's comfort, you'll love this pad too. Ask for ECOGOLD frictionless saddle pads at your local tack supplier store or visit them online at ecogold.ca. Now, enjoy today's tip.
Dr. Jackman, hopefully you're not going to get me too worried. We might not gross out Glenn, but we might get me a little anxious over this one.
No, I think when you start adding multiple disciplines to horses and give them the mind break, I think they actually enjoy it, and I think they can perform better at their intended use. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, and my little quarter horse, he has tried hard and he schools second level for dressage, but I spent a lot of time with my Hanoverian doing the upper level stuff, and so I thought this could be fun. But I'm a little worried about breaking him just because his body isn't used to this kind of stuff, and it's fast. And you stop hard. And so what are some of the differences that you see as a veterinarian between the English discipline horses and the Western discipline horses?
Well, and there's a wide variety of Western discipline horses. We obviously have the rodeo horses, so your roping horses, your calf roping horses, team roping horses, as well as your barrel racing horses. But, we also have, the events such as reining cow horse, and cutting. And what we do find on a lot of these horses is that there are a lot of, sharp, quick turns, kind of rollover aspects, torque-type aspects that occur through, the soft tissues in the joints. And, subsequently we can obviously see some injuries related to those.
Mm-hmm. So are a lot of those injuries really like you're riding and your horse is fine and then they're injured? Some kind of acute injury?
Yeah, some of them can be. I mean, definitely, one of the things we'll see, and especially in the cutting horses, to a lesser extent in the reiners and the reining cow horses, are, injuries to the stifles, and they generally are, acute type injuries, albeit, you can't have wear and tear that then predisposes to an acute type of an injury. But we'll also see, what I consider kind of more, chronic, insidious. There's wear and tear that happens. There's remodeling that's constantly happening in the body, and then there gets to a point, there reaches a point where that particular body structure can't withstand the stress, and then you do get kind of a acute exacerbation of something that's probably kind of been creeping up on us, and that's some of the things that we'll see regarding suspensory injuries.
Okay, yeah, and I spent quite a bit of time at a reining barn a few years back, and I saw a lot of things being done to support horses' hocks, and we do that, of course, with our English sport horses too. But what's going on with those horses' hocks and the injections on those?
Yeah, I mean, the hocks. I mean, the horse is unique in that the primary wear and tear area on the horse's hind leg is the lower hock joints, and the hock is equivalent to our ankle, but it actually has 4 different joints. There's a top joint that really has all the kind of flexion extension that comes from the hock movement, but then there's 2 lower joints that don't communicate with that upper joint as far as the fluid doesn't pass back and forth between the joints, and those are the ones that kind of really take that torque stress. The good news is that those joints really only have 1 to 2%, really flexion aspects. So they're not a high motion joint. Conversely, like in a human, our wear and tear kind of usually is our knee, and that's a high motion joint. And anytime you have wear and tear or injury happening to a high motion joint, it's got a much poorer prognosis. So these lower hock joints that then do sustain that stress do have a tendency to get inflamed periodically, or they can actually progress to arthritic conditions, but this is something that we can generally manage and manage very well throughout a horse's entire athletic career with periodic injections as well as some supplements and stuff to try to keep these horses performing well. So lower hocks tend to have a tendency to be more of a performance injury versus a overt lameness aspect. And so, if they are bothering the horse, we will periodically inject these joints to try and calm that inflammation down. Because they're low motion, these are joints that seem to do very well with injections, and a lot of them don't even ever progress to an arthritic condition. And because of that, if we have these hocks working well, because these horses do stress these in their normal movements that they have to do to perform, we also think that helps protect the other joints in the body, such as the stifle and stuff. So we think it's important to keep those things working well.
Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned the suspensory injuries. Do you see a lot of those in these Western performance horses?
We see a fair number of them. We see both front end and hind end. The front end suspensory injuries we probably see more commonly in cutting horses than anything. One of the reasons is, there's probably two major fold. One is that if anybody's ever watched a cutting competition, when they go to first enter that herd, they need to do it in a very quiet fashion. They don't want to spook the cattle, get them stirred up, and they need to kind of move through that herd very quietly, and in which case, obviously, these are athletes. A lot of these are younger athletes. They have a tendency to really enjoy what they're doing and get a little excited about it. And so a lot of these horses are kind of exercised down, so they're warmed up very well, but, they go in to perform after they've been exercised for a while. And then the other thing is to do the very, kind of quick turns and stuff. They need to have good footing under them, which means they do have to compete in a little bit deeper ground. Mm-hmm. And you combine those two things, a fatigue type of an aspect as well as, the deeper ground, and we do have a tendency to see those front suspensories take a little bit of the brunt of the blow.
Yeah, and if you've ever watched any of the cuttings, those horses are down in the dirt and they're enjoying their job and moving. If one were to do something to the suspensory while they were training or competing, is it going to be just the instant thing, the rider's going to feel it and pull up the horse, or is that horse's adrenaline going to be going a little bit and it's going to show up later?
Usually it'll show up a little bit later. I mean, as that adrenaline's going, and because they are doing most of their work on their hind end, in reality, usually they can go ahead and compete that competition. As they get done, the adrenaline starts coming down. Sometimes they'll notice a little bit of swelling, a little bit of heat in that leg, and that's when they'll start showing a little bit of soreness.
Mm-hmm. So what about some of the other sports like the barrel horses? I know a couple years back I saw a horse at the circuit finals in my area slip around the barrel and ended up with a broken pelvis. Are those kind of injuries and broken bones things that you see in Western performance horses?
We do. I mean, one of the things that's, we see definitely higher incidence in, the Western performance horses, especially like the rodeo-type horses, versus the English sport horses, are pastern injuries. And again, it relates to the torque that's occurring at high speeds, and you will get a sudden injury to the pastern, oftentimes, potentially even a fracture of the hind pasterns more so than the front pasterns. But, when we do see those slips and that type of thing, that then has a tendency to show as an injury higher up in the leg, whether it's stifle through the pelvis, and we'll sometimes see pelvic fractures. We'll see stifle injuries that relate to usually kind of more of a ligament or a meniscal type injury. So those are definitely something that we have a tendency to see more in the Western performance horse.
Yeah, and so what's the prognosis on those kind of injuries? Because that sounds to me like it'd be kind of devastating. Is that always the case?
Well, it's not always the case. I mean, amazingly enough, the pelvic fractures, when we see injuries up high. Unfortunately, just due to the size of the horse and that type of bone, I mean, as far as what we can do from a therapeutic standpoint or from a surgical standpoint is very limited. And so in that situation, usually we're looking at a rest type period, but it is not uncommon, as long as the pelvic fracture really doesn't communicate into the hip joint, it's not uncommon actually for those horses to actually come back as full athletes again. But it just takes time, 6 months to a year rest, but a lot of those horses can come back. As far as the pastern injuries go, again, those are generally more related to a fracture type of a situation. And that is one of the true, fractured bones in a horse or fractured legs in a horse that it's not a devastating injury. It usually does require surgery where we go in and actually do a arthrodesis, or we actually fuse that pastern joint. And on a hind leg, we, as long as it's not a severe fracture of the bone or communicates, all the way through the bone, and most of these don't, then we can actually give a very, very good prognosis for returning to full athletic competition again.
Okay. So with a horse like mine, my quarter horse Jack, who hasn't been doing much other than loping around and some trail rides, and I'm thinking about going to do this with him. And with him, I know that once he figures out the cows are running from him, he's going to really dig it. So what can I do to protect him or a horse like that who's starting out in Western performance training? What kind of management things can Western riders do to protect their horses from injury?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing, and it comes down to any horse, is actually just a really good conditioning program. And I think one of the things is that when we're competing these horses on a high level and that type of thing, I mean, it's pretty easy to have them in training, have them in a consistent conditioning program, keep them in shape, that type of a thing. But then, we have these situations where, we're kind of the weekend warriors and our work schedules or whatever don't allow us to probably keep these horses conditioned as well as possible. And that's what predisposes us to injury, and it's no different than us as people itself. So I think a good conditioning program is vital and paramount. The other thing is that doing everything possible to make certain that the foundation of that horse is taken care of. And the cornerstone of that's going to be proper farrier work. Making certain that we have the feet at the proper angle, that we're getting our shoeing done at a consistent interval, that, we have the proper support, whether it's, the right shoe on them, the proper amount of heel support, those types of things, I think are absolutely critical. And then obviously we like to, do things to try to, just maintain the health of those joints as much as possible, in which case, we can go with the oral supplements, or, we really, at least in our practice, we really like the use of, Adequan as a, preventative aspect to try and maintain the health of a horse's joint.
Question. Let me jump in here real quick, and that's one question. Now, I love using Adequan, and recently somebody said to me that, there's the potential for using a generic form of Adequan to save some money. How do you feel about that?
Well, first and foremost, there is no such thing as a generic Adequan. Okay, and a true generic is a compound that has the exact same chemical formulation of the original product or the trade name product that was out there. There is some compounded product out there, which is made by a compounding pharmacy, that has some molecules in it that are in Adequan, but doesn't have the full, complete, arsenal of molecules in there that Adequan does. So, I think the aspect of saying there's generic Adequan is actually misleading. There is no such thing out there. Now, that being said, I mean, we know a number of owners and that utilize it's typically termed N-acetyl D-glucosamine, and glucosamine is one of the molecules in Adequan, that feel like they do have some benefit from that. It's definitely less expensive, but I'm generally of a believer you get what you pay for.
Oh.
Okay.
So and regarding like the joint supplements, where should horse owners turn to get more information about the supplements?
Yeah, I mean, and it's difficult because there are a myriad of them out there. And I mean, every time you pick up a new trade magazine, it seems like there's a new one out there. I would actually encourage them to talk to their veterinarian because, there is definitely a lot of recommendations out there, whether it's made by trainers or owners or affidavits from veterinarians or that type of thing. But in reality, there is a paucity of true good research related to these things. But I would encourage people to talk to their own veterinarian about what they particularly like. I mean, we have some that we have a tendency to recommend that we think are good supplements regarding, maintaining the health of a joint. But I would say, contact your veterinarian.
Okay. Well, I think what I'm taking away from this is I need to ride my quarter horse a little bit more before I get him out after the cattle and get him in shape.
Yeah, I would strongly encourage it. I mean, have him in a nice conditioning program when you start doing the athletic venture that you want to do. Let's not jump to the highest level. Let's kind of start easy and work our way up to it. Meaning, if we want to make it a rope horse, let's not chase the absolutely fastest cattle we can to start with, and let's kind of work our way into it. No different than any other discipline.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jackman, for joining us today and talking about these Western performance horses. I appreciate it. And if anyone's looking for more information about Western performance care, you can go to thehorse.com. We have an article up. It's from that March issue. It's article 19670. Put that in the search bar, and you can find that article.
Well, there you go. An interesting conversation. To listen to more of the Horse.com's tips, just go to horsetipdaily.com and go to the experts drop-down menu on the left. If you love listening to Glenn the Geek and Jamie putting in their 2 cents on horse health topics, tune in to Horses in the Morning, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. for a weekly fix of up-to-the-minute horse health information. You can also go to thehorse.com to find the mother lode of horse health information covering pretty much every topic imaginable. Don't forget to support our sponsors here on Horse Tip Daily because they make these podcasts possible. Today's sponsor has been ECOGOLD. Ask for ECOGOLD saddle pads and protective horse boots by name at your local tack store or visit them online at ecogold.ca. Please stop by the Horse Tip Daily Facebook page and let us know what you think of the tips you hear on the show. It's also a great place to tell us about topics you'd like to hear us cover on the show. You can subscribe to all the great shows on the Horse Radio Network through iTunes or Zune and get your horse podcasts automatically downloaded to your iPod, Zune, or MP3 player. You can also listen to the shows right on Facebook. The player's right there every day. I'll be back again tomorrow with another new expert and a different horse tip. Until then, go ride your horse! The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements of guests or their opinions. Use your own judgment when listening to the tips provided by the experts on Horse Tip Daily.